There's a video that went viral on Twitter a little bit ago. Boy, I started a lot of my videos recently with that sentence, eh? From the account Non-Aesthetic Things, with the caption, "High school in 2002 looks so chill." Because I'm an old man, and this is the era in which I went to high school, this looked very familiar to me. And I can vouch for its authenticity. The fashion, the architecture, the look of the old computers that were clearly outdated, but the school still had them kicking around due to budget cuts. In fact, this chick looks like an acquaintance of mine from back in the day. No way, this can't be my old school. I refuse to believe it. It kinda looks like it though. Oh, fun fact about this girl, if it is actually my old friend. She was a closeted lesbian back in high school, and I was one of the only kids who comforted her in private because she got teased, like everyone did for everything. But she couldn't take it like most kids, and I was a big softie. And nowadays, in her adulthood, she's a progressive who hates my guts because I didn't radicalize along with her and she caught wind of my channel. Many such cases. Even if you're a Zoomer and didn't grow up in this era, you can probably tell a few things right off the bat. You can tell who the confident guys are, who the popular guys are, those aren't always the same thing, who the nerds are, which girls are likely to be friendly but distant, which girls will never give you the time of day, and which girls will probably put out. There are some things that are just universal, but there's also something particular to this era. In 2002, cell phones looked like this. These phones were capable of texting, and for professionals that basically replaced pagers. But they came pre-packaged with only the most simplistic of games, if any. There was no app store, no way to download new stuff, and software updates were basically non-existent. And phone cameras? Sure, they were kind of around on the highest end models, but they didn't record any video, and they only took the lowest quality pics imaginable. This video was, therefore, shot on something like this, an old school digital camcorder, one of the earliest models. I've actually got one of these stuffed away in my closet. Maybe someday I should do a video on all the old tech I have lying around. These things still recorded on magnetic tape, like analog camcorders did with the mini VHS format, but it was digital tape. In other words, very simplistically, rather than recording the image directly onto the tape like with a film strip, the tape recorded computerized data that could be plugged into one of these doohickeys so it could be read by your PC. The point is, this is an era where cameras weren't common, but we had a general feeling of what was on the horizon. Smartphones hadn't been invented yet, but there was an air of inevitability that in the near future we would eventually have one pocket device that would do everything. Therefore, when kids walked around the halls with a camera, it was novel. Some kids acted up, some kids were shy, but there was never any sense of danger. It was always treated like, let's fuck around because who's gonna watch the video? We all had parents who kept old stacks of family videos in the basement that never got watched, despite them constantly talking about how important they were and how they were gonna get watched soon, and oh no, we can't clean them out even if we need the space. The idea was that this video, like every other video, was going to be watched maybe once for the people in the video to laugh at with their friends, and then the tape was going to be put onto a shelf and forgotten about until it was either thrown away or overwritten. That's not how cameras are treated today. Nowadays, and I'm speaking secondhand here, I haven't even been to university in a decade, everyone's got a phone that can quickly record high-definition video of everything going on at all times. Every stupid event that happens in the halls of a school are bound to be captured and immortalized on social media. And if it goes viral, forget it. That video will be part of the common cultural canon for a while. Though, less than before, I think. Star Wars Kid was a viral video from 2002, where a chubby guy waves a pole around trying to imitate Darth Maul. That meme lasted for over a decade, and that guy basically had his life ruined for a while. Nowadays, when an embarrassing video goes viral, it only really sticks around for a couple of weeks. But people are deathly afraid of going viral for stuff like this. Back in my day, here's me sounding old again, when a big shit show kicked off at school centered on you, when you went home, it was over, at least temporarily. You could play some video games, hang out with the few friends that hadn't abandoned you, retreat into your private space. But if you go viral as a kid now, your cell phone is going to be constantly blowing up, your Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. Those other kids are going to be pinging you constantly on social media. You literally have to unplug from modern technology to escape it. As a result, the Zoomers that I know tell me that school nowadays is a lot more uptight than anything you see in that old 2002 video, with people constantly in fear of doing something wrong because they know it will be clipped. Hence, the original caption of the tweet. High school in 2002 looked so chill, because it was. Lots of the normal people replying to it are pretty much expressing the exact same views that I have, but look at the progressive replies. Every single person in this video just called me a faggot. Well, I'm pretty sure that nerdy jolly kid did. He looks like he probably just kept to himself. But yes, I called my friends faggots and retards and worse, and they called me the same. And you know what? We were a pretty tight friend group. The fact that everyone got their turn at being the butt of the joke and nobody took it too seriously created a strong bond. You sound like the kind of guy who would ruin it for people. They all look omega racist. Why? Is it because it's a predominantly white school? You can almost feel the homophobia through the video. Oh yeah, gay people were mocked for being gay, but everyone was mocked for being everything. I never hated gay people, and I'm pretty sure most other kids didn't back then. But a joke isn't the same as hatred. Now, from the adults, there were some shitty teachers, especially some shitty parents. It was a different story. You could find some legit hatred from them. But the kids? No way, man. There was this feeling of live and let live casual liberalism as the default. Everyone joked and nobody cared. They probably beat the only openly gay kid to death with hammers, and the police ruled it a suicide. You have to be insane to think like this. No, the school wasn't covered in rainbows, and your identity wasn't constantly affirmed over loudspeaker every step down the fucking hallway. But that doesn't mean that gay kids were murdered. As I get older, it will always surprise me how blatant that Zoomers are about describing historical events entirely inaccurately, when I was there, and I know that they're talking out of their asses. Everyone in this video is white. So are you, bitch. What's the point? Y'all motherfuckers are not romanticizing the generation of school, where if you had basic hygiene, you were gay. And if you paid attention to anything in school, you were the R slur. You can just say retard, it's okay, right? Elon Musk owns Twitter now, it's fine. We've gone over the gay shit enough already, so let's talk about the second half of that comment. Yeah, the 90s and 2000s had a pretty strong slacker culture, where school sucked, caring about school events was considered lame, and if you could skip out early and do your own thing, that was a prime bonus. That attitude was a byproduct of the individualistic ways that we viewed things, and guess what? It was better. School-sanctioned events and institutions were always shittier than just hanging out in your own friend groups with your own rules. Okay, you get the point. The progs did not like this video going viral, and despite how it actually does look chill, and how it's described to be chill by most normal people who were there, and how I personally remember it being a pretty good time once you add up all the good and the bad, the progs overwhelmingly came out against it, claiming that despite what your lying eyes see, it was a hotbed of not just jokes and jabs, but legitimate hatred. Why? Is it because some of them were actually hated as kids? That's possible. Is it because they couldn't roll with the punches back then? That's actually more possible. But there's a more complicated underlying reason that can't be explained with simple personal motivations. Check out this tweet. Any Zoomer who thinks the right pick is above average attractive doesn't understand that in the 90s, a 7 looked like the left pick. Above average meant something else back then. There'd be like 10 girls as or more beautiful than Connolly working at every chain restaurant. I'm not sure how accurate this is. I think it's kind of accurate based on my memories, but I was much younger in the 90s and the 2000s. Too young to really notice girls. I'm pretty sure that Jennifer Connelly was hotter than a 7 though. But the underlying idea is that women have let themselves go, that in the 90s there were more good-looking women running around, and now they're all either slobs or, I guess, highly manufactured OnlyFans ethos. Is this actually true? Again, my memory tells me maybe, but also that he's probably overstating his case. But here's what else I remember. I remember when this type of girl was considered desirable in the 90s, older people would pine away for the fashion types of the 1970s, saying that girls nowadays just don't stack up, that they lack modesty, they're all overtly sexual, or they're rebels, or they're punks. One of the appeals of that 70s show, for the young adults of the 90s, was that it was a recreation of what they remembered as the ideal. I guess that's why they're trying to capture that same lightning in a bottle with that 90s show now. I do think that some of this is going to be just nostalgia. I'm sure that in the 1970s, young guys were pining for the fashion and habits of the 1950s, desperately hoping for that 50s-style girlfriend, because when they were in their most formative years, that was the normal. Just like how guys my age still kind of have a thing for emo girls, even though progs have basically ruined the dyed hair look. I don't think it's only the case that society is just decaying this whole time, and women are just progressively getting worse. If that effect does exist, it's probably pretty overstated, and a lot of this will just come down to rose-colored glasses. But as soon as we take this conversation back to that high school video, I don't think it's just rose-colored glasses. I described earlier how constantly being connected to the internet through phones and smart devices has made the high school environment far worse than it used to be. And we can see right in that old video that cameras were considered novel based on their reaction, and therefore people weren't constantly fearing having their most embarrassing moments immortalized. So clearly, some things are worse than they used to be, and that's not just the boomer in me talking. Consider now the prog reply to that second tweet, the one where he called Jennifer Connelly a 7. Yes, there's a lot of super replies like the first time, but we're going to focus on just one so that we can get to the core of the issue. I don't have all day here. There's something about seeing the fascist veneration of an imagined past being applied to the literal 1990s that draws into stark relief how absurd and intellectually barren it is. Imagine the level of brain rot you have to drool this sentence onto your keyboard. The leftoids were enraged just a few days before seeing that high school clip from 2002 where everyone's having a good time, claiming that all those people were homophobic reactionaries. The reason for that is laid bare in this response. They've decided that the, quote, veneration of an imagined past, in other words, any sort of nostalgic feeling that suggests that the past was better than the present in any possible way, is now officially a fascist dog whistle. It's very weird, year zero, permanent revolution, end of history type Marxist stuff. To them, the past was nothing but a dark age of bigotry, and if you have fond recollection of it, that means you oppose the current cultural revolution. Nostalgia is therefore an emotion that only counter-revolutionaries have, and betrays their support for reactionary ideals. This idea is obviously retarded, but from the socialist point of view, it's also true, and it's why socialists, even those who aren't engaged in a violent revolution, are often pretty dangerous to the social fabric. In their view, nostalgia is fascism because fascism is glorifying an idealized past that never existed. So, if you happen to think that things might have been better in some way when you were younger, you're a fascist. They're wrong about this because they have a fundamentally incorrect view of fascism's relationship with modernity. See my video, The 3 Forms of Fascism, for more details on that. But from their point of view, the march of progress means that the future is always better than the past. Therefore, if you think the past was somehow better than the future, you're a reactionary and therefore a fascist. It's very easy to poke holes in this logic, by the way. If you lived in the Fallout wasteland where nuclear war had destroyed civilization, clearly the past is better than the future. And clearly you're not a fascist for not wanting to live in the post-apocalypse that the March of Progress had ultimately created. Oh, and if you think I'm overstating my case about the whole nostalgia is fascism thing, it doesn't take more than a quick internet search to uncover a trove of retards who genuinely believe this dumb fuck idea. Everything from the past was fascist because it doesn't adhere to modern moral standards, hence the attempt to remake and update everything for modern global audiences so that no one's offended or excluded. Gamers are fascist, not only because gaming is based in competition and competition is fascist, but because most gamers believe that modern games generally suck, older games were better, and that's a rejection of progress, therefore it's fascist. The Soviet Union was the wrong kind of socialism for today's modern socialist, so when some people are nostalgic for the Cold War era, that's red fascism, not real socialism. Of course, leftoids will never apply this standard to their own nostalgia for the New Deal era with its government regulations and strong labor unions, which reveals the hollowness of this idea. It's not actually that newer means better and older means fascism. It's just that whatever the progs like is good, and whatever they don't like is fascism. Time just works as a way to mask the hypocrisy. In fact, a political theorist that leftoids tend to prefer when talking about fascism, Roger Griffin, stated in his book, The Nature of Fascism, that the palingenetic political myth could be taken to refer to a backward-looking nostalgia for a restoration of the past, that is, a rebirth of the same. Its value as a term would be diminished if it were to be extended to ultra-conservative or reactionary movements which involved no sense of revolutionary progress or new birth. In an era dominated by linear conceptions of time and progress, revolution now denotes the emergence of a substantially new order of society, no matter how much it is inspired by historical precedents or the myth of a past golden age. In palingenetic political myth, the new order will be created within a secular and linear historical time. The arrow of time points not backwards, but forwards, even when the archer looks over his shoulder for guidance on where to aim. Griffin coined the term palingenesis. At least in a political context, it does have a previous biological meaning, to refer to fascism not as a reactionary ideology, but a modernist one. When socialists claim that fascism is the desire to return to an ideal past that never existed, they're actually wrong, and the author that they tend to rely on doesn't even agree with them. Griffin's view is that the ideal society, from the fascist perspective, would not be an old golden age recreated. It would not be the return meme that comes out of actual reactionary thought. It would instead be a revolutionary era after a period of decadence, modeled on the old myth, but in tandem with the new advancements of the future. This is why, as I've said in multiple videos now, fascism is a revolutionary ideology, not a reactionary one. It doesn't seek a return to a nostalgic past that never existed. It seeks to build a new society where that past that never existed is reified and modernized. All of this is to say that every single drooling prog brainlet who says her darn nostalgia is fascism is actually a sub-75 IQ mentally deficient retard who legitimately thinks that you're a fascist if you prefer old Nintendo 64 games to Fortnite or some shit. The actual truth is, something new doesn't automatically make it better. Progress is a matter of personal preference and not an inevitable march leftward. Here's an example of what I mean. Progress literally means forward or onward movement towards a destination. If you want a stable relationship and kids and a fulfilling life, that's your destination. That means that the progressive vision of sexuality, with its open relationships and casual sexual encounters, isn't progress towards your end goal, but regress away from it. I'm not saying you can't do those things. What I am saying is, if your goal is a wife and kids, then progressive sexuality is a path leading away from that goal. To a person who has that goal, what the progressive calls progress isn't actually progress. And yes, there are people out there who say that if you engage in traditional modes of relationships, you're a counter-revolutionary and you're upholding the cis, white, heteronormative capitalist patriarchy. Because, of course. You've seen images like this, right? The idealized 1950s style Leave It to Beaver family unit, where everyone is presented as happy in their traditional lifestyle? Why do the progs rail against this image so hard? Is it because some minority of people were actually oppressed under this model? Of course, not everyone can fit the mold. But is it also because that model no longer exists? And if you pine away for it, you must be labeled as a fascist, because to do otherwise is to admit that the past actually was better in some ways for some people. And then it naturally follows that the progressive view of progress has not actually been universally good. And it's also wrecked a lot of shit along the way? Yes, that absolutely underlies what they're doing here. And that's why they reacted so strongly to the old high school clip that we started this video with. Denying that the culture and relationships of the 2000s could contain anything of value at all is just another step in the march of progress, just as they must deny the value that existed in the culture and relationships of the 1950s. You must be made to believe that all the images of the past are simply propaganda, that they could not have ever existed, and that no one was ever actually happy with them. If only the future exists and the past is utterly forbidden to you, then people have no choice but to live in the progressive paradigm. To wonder if there truly was good things that have been lost, or even just become more rare, in tandem with all of the legitimately good things that the future has actually brought us, means that you have already rejected the progressive worldview. And because those heretical thoughts of yours exist outside of the progressive paradigm, they must be classified as fascism.